Hello and welcome to TextAid Tuesday with ReadSpeaker. My name is Rebecca Wildenhain, Marketing Director for ReadSpeaker. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Our presentation today will take about 30 minutes, and that will include a Q&A session at the end. Your microphones will remain muted throughout the webinar. However, questions can be submitted through the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen. Today's webinar will be recorded and you will receive a copy of the presentation following the webinar. Now I'd like to introduce you to our host for today's TextAid Tuesday, Ginger Dewey. Ginger helps ReadSpeaker clients get the most use out of their suite of learning tools. With over 35 years as an educator in both K-12 and higher ed, Ginger is an advocate for accessibility and UDL. Over to you, Ginger.
Thank you, Rebecca, and welcome everyone to TextAid Tuesdays. Let's get started. Before we get into the research paper, which is our topic for today, I want to introduce you to TextAid. And as you can see, you have some listen controls here. You have information about a library, text, downloading, saving, some tools, annotations, highlighter, writing assistance, translation, OCR capabilities, and settings. And we will be talking about different ones of these tools in today's session. For the research paper, we're going to start with a database article and citations. We'll look at the TextAid library, how to do annotations and highlighting, research paper construction, and then reviewing the paper. Now, our process will be first find your article and download it. Copy your citation and paste it on the top page of the article. You'll highlight what you think is necessary. You'll collect up those highlights, which forms a summary, write a paper, and then instead of proofreading, we proof listen to our paper. We do not want our papers to look like this when students have turned them in, and this helps you get to a point where they don't look like that. We want our students working in groups, collaborating, and getting information. So now I have logged in to our public library here in York County in South Carolina, and I did a search for learning strategies. And I can narrow this down to, say, 2012. And I want full text. And I can narrow it more with these search engines over here. This article right here about analyzing the importance competency gap of distance educators with increased utilization of online learning strategies in a developing world context. I took a few moments before the webinar and I read through most of this, and it was quite interesting. So let's use this article as part of our research. So the first thing I would do is I would open the article, and I go over here to PDF full text, and I click on it. And my article comes up. We can see it's 20 pages, so I'm going to download the article, and I'm going to save it on my desktop. And it's now downloaded. And the other thing I'm going to do while I'm here is click on this little piece of paper on the side, which is citation. And I'm going to choose my citation, and I'm going to choose APA. And I am copying that citation. Now what I'll do is go into TextAid, and I will go to the library, and I'm going to upload the document. Now, when you upload it, you first say which language you want it in. I want it in English. And I'm going to put it in my webinars folder. Now, if this was an article that was not in a database that you have to provide a password for, like say it's out on CNN, I could just copy the URL and paste it in and it would retrieve the article. However, this one is on my computer. I can do select document and bring it in, or I can click and drag it. Once I have it there, I click upload. And I click close. If you will notice, now I am in my webinars folder in my library, and here is my article. So I'm going to click on the article, and it is 20 pages, so it will take a moment for it to load. And as it is loading, you'll notice right here, I can show or hide this sidebar. You know, I can turn it off or turn it on. If you're on a small screen, you may want to turn it off. And you may also want to turn off the side panel of controls. That way you have more room for your document to appear if you're using, say, a phone or an iPad or something along those lines. Now, my next step is to click on annotations, and you'll notice I have this little toolbar that showed up over here on the right. I'm going to click on text, click right here, and I am pasting in my annotation. And let's see, I'm going to position it, say right there, and click enter. So it's all up there. That is that annotation. So I know I have that. And then I'm going to start reading the information. And one thing that jumped out at me when I was reading this, and I'm going to go to page 2, was the fact that it started talking about right here, I need to highlight some stuff. So I'm clicking on highlighter over here on the right. And with my highlighter, I have a pointer. I have 4 colors. And then I have this tool over here which says collect, clear a page, or clear all my highlights. And I will be using the colors and the collection here in a minute. But let's talk about the colors. If you use your colors wisely, then you can construct a paper using, say, yellow for the introduction, your thesis sentence, your thesis paragraph, your onboarding of the paper, maybe blue for the support of your hypothesis or thesis, and green for what you're concluding, where you might want to use a quote for concluding your paper. Now, I always save red for the comment that I find in a paper that I think is just interesting. I'm not certain if I'm going to use it, but I want to have it just in case I need that part. Well, I'm going to use yellow, and I'm going to take this information right here, because I think it's interesting that they're talking about how synchronous and asynchronous communication channels are part of this technology enhanced learning, and that it uses a lot of social media. And as I go on down, I find other information. Let's see, let's jump down just a little bit. We'll go to page 3. And right here, this is supporting what we know is important when we are trying to design ways to teach. And I'm going to jump on down, say, to this page. And it says, from the viewpoint of distance learners, Berg observes the major changes in expectations of students lead to major changes in the way ODL academics are expected to perform their jobs. So in other words, the students are leading the jobs, the expectations. So I'm going to highlight that because I think that's kind of interesting. It might not fit with my thesis, but it is interesting information. And then I'm going to slide on down here to my conclusion for the paper. And in the conclusion of the paper, we see that there is a training gap, so that's supporting. And then we see the support here about the results of the study affects this information. And this right here might be part of the conclusion. Okay, so I've highlighted different parts of this article. My next step is to come up here to our menu, and I want to collect my highlights. Now, as I collect my highlights, I have to say how I want it highlighted. Where do I want it? On the page or the entire document? Well, I want the whole document. I want to sort by color so that I will have my colors together of this was yellow, so it's start, blue, middle, green, end, red, just interesting. And I do want to show these color indicators. You can arrange that the way you want, and you can check only certain colors if you want to, but I want them all. So I'm going to collect. And as you can see right here, I have the highlights from. Here's the name of the article, or as much as it gave me, and I'm going to bold that. And then what I'm going to also do, and this is the second place to put the citation. Remember, that's still on your copy paste. So I'm going to paste it right there. So now I have my citation. And I'm going to italicize it so I know it's my citation, and I also bolded it. So when I go back and I look at this article, what I saved from it, I have the name of the article, I have the citation. I also have, if I choose to quote exactly or word it so that it needs to be cited, I have the exact page number that these pieces of information came from. And that's important because some references require that page number, where others only require the span of pages, such as this right here. So it would depend on if you're using APA, MLA, Chicago, whatever, that you would do this. Well, I'm going to save this. And when I click save, I have some choices. I can save it as an entry in my library. I can save it as a PDF, download it as a PDF and download it as a Word. Now, if I just click save, it's going to say, what do you want to call it? And I'm going to call this DL Info. And I'll put it in my webinars folder. Now, typically you would put the whole title of the article, and I'm going to say save text. Now, since that has been done, if I go to save and click on my arrows, now I have two other places I can save it to. I can save it to my Google Drive or to my OneDrive, depending on if you're using Microsoft or if you're using the Google tools. I can also print it. So if I want to move this over out of TextAid because I have gotten so much there, I need to put it over into my Google Drive or my OneDrive, I can transfer it over to that point. So what we've done so far is we have looked up our topic, we've found an article, the citation for the article, We've highlighted it and collect up the highlights, and I have everything ready for me to write my paper. So what we would typically do is in Microsoft Word or Open Word or Word Perfect or whatever Word, Google Docs, whatever word program you're using, you would use it to construct the paper. Then you're going to copy and paste the paper into this new text document. Okay, the first thing I want to know is, how does it sound? Have I written something intelligent so far? So we're going to click listen and just take a listen to it.
In this day of continuous technology development, we need to increase the awareness of skills needed by distance education instructors. Social media, synchronous and asynchronous delivery of information is part of the technology-enhanced learning, TEL. With this aspect, we will address the factors that face the distance education instructors, such as time, training in specific areas such as social media, changing technologies, etc. Many training programs only address the big competency gaps of which the entire institution instead of the gaps in specific areas.
When we listened to it, I heard some clumsiness. I heard a subject-verb conjugation issue, and there were a couple of words that when they were said just didn't ring true to me. So the first thing I'm going to do is see if I have any spelling errors. So I'm going to click on spelling. And I say, oh, I've got two words that are misspelled. So if I click on asynchronous, I can choose it. When I click on technology, I can fix that one. So now I want to check and see, is that all? And it now tells me no spelling errors. All right, that got that one. And if we listened again, we would hear, we need to increases. Well, that's a subject-verb conjugation problem. We need to take the S off of it. So now let's listen to it one more time.
In this day of continuous technology development, we need to increase the awareness of skills needed by distance education instructors. Social media, synchronous and asynchronous delivery of information is part of the technology-enhanced learning, TEL. With this aspect, we will address the factors that face the distance education instructors, such as time, training in specific areas such as social media, changing technologies, etc. Many training programs only address the big competency gaps of which the entire institution instead of the gaps in specific areas.
I didn't hear any subject-verb conjugation problems this time as I was listening, and I didn't hear any words being pronounced funny, so I think I have it, but this last sentence was just terrible. When I read that and listened to it, I had many training programs only address the big competency gaps of which the entire institution instead of the gaps in specific areas. In that sentence, it sounds like I was going one way and then I changed and went another way. So I need to smooth that out. So how about saying many training programs only address the big competency gaps of institutions instead of the gaps of specific areas. And that's a way of proof listening. And you would go through your whole paper like that. I would suggest doing one paragraph at a time and then proof listen the entire paper. So these are the things that you would want to do. Once you have it finished, you would need to then go to a tutor for things that your ear cannot catch. And some of those things would be like right here, technology enhanced learning. You would either want to put a space on both sides of the hyphen. You would need a capital E and a capital L in that. since it is being used as an acronym later on in your paper, you would need to fix that. A tutor would help with that. Another issue is we have distance education in caps here with instructors, and we don't have it in caps there. So you would need to decide which one is correct and be consistent throughout the entire paper. Those are not things you can catch by your ear. So those are things that the tutor can address. And by taking this paper, constructing it, using information that you have divided up to help support the thesis, to support the, construct the thesis, support the thesis, and conclude the thesis, the paper. By having that marked up, you organize your material better. Therefore, you write a cleaner paper thought-wise as you start. Then we clean up what we catch by our ear. After that, what we would do is, if we still thought there were problems or we weren't certain, we'd go to the tutor. You've just saved the tutor their first appointment with you by doing all this in TextAid first, because most initial appointments with the tutor are cleaning up things we just cleaned up. Once they get that cleaned up, then they can look at structure, which would include your distance education, whether or not to capitalize it, and getting caps on all of this, that type thing. They would look at transition between paragraphs. They would look at, did you cite your paper correctly? Did you use proper notation in your citations? You know, did you mix MLA with APA? You know, you followed the right path all the way through. That's the primary purpose of the tutor, not to clean up clumsy sentences and typos and things that when we listen, we hear that's obviously wrong, so we need to fix it. So after doing all of this, you have one appointment with the tutor, and then your paper is ready. You take that information, go back, clean up the paper from what the tutor has indicated you still need to do, and you turn it in. The tutor now can see twice as many people because they aren't having to spend time doing this cleanup, and they're getting to do the part of the job that they really enjoy, which is helping the students learn these other grammatical rules that they maybe aren't familiar with. And by following those steps, you are following the route that we really need to follow in constructing a good research paper, and using technology to help maximize the use of our resources.
Ginger, we do have a couple of questions if you're
okay.
Able to take them now.
Yes.
One of the questions is, how do I find the citations, and what do I do with them?
Okay, the way you find your citations is when you are in your library databases, you've looked up an article. Over here on the right-hand side, you generally have save it to a Google Drive, print it, email it, add it to a folder, cite it, export it, get a permalink for it, and then you have the ability to share it. So the first thing you want to do is get to the citation, which is this little sheet of paper on the edge. Is everyone able to see that? Let me pull this down just a little bit so make certain it's not getting cut off on my screen. It's this guy right here. And when I click on citation, I have choices. You've got ABNT, AMA, APA, Chicago, Harvard, Australian, Harvard, Chicago, Humanities. This other one was Chicago author date, MLA, Vancouver are the choices that this particular database gives. And when you are copying the citation, what I do is I just copy the entire citation, and then in TextAid, when I'm on the paper, on the top page of it, just so in case I don't find anything initially, I paste it in there using annotations. When I click on annotations, I have this little toolbar, and the T is for text, and you just click and paste in there. Now, once you have it there, if you don't use the article initially, then that's fine. But you could go ahead and mark up the article like we did. And when you mark it up and collect the highlights by using this guy right here, these three little lines, when you click on it, you say collect highlights, and that produces this paper. I also paste my citation in there because now this is the document I'm going to be going to as I write my paper. And I know if I use something specifically from this article, then I've got to cite it if it turns out that it is a fact that needs to be cited. There are some facts, as we all know, you get wet when you're standing outside and it's raining and you don't have on rain gear. We don't have to cite that. But if we cite something specifically in an article, a quote, or a piece of information that is not commonly known and commonly used across articles, you do have to cite it. Now, when you are doing your citation here, you would not have your citation in that part of proof listening to it, because you're not going to catch with that the issues that would show up. You might catch a comma. You could look at it from that viewpoint if you know it's author, comma, date, etc., how the form goes. You could check it that way. But typically the citations we don't listen to. We let the tutors help out in that. Does that cover that, Rebecca?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And we're actually right at the bottom of the half hour. So if you want to just, yeah, great. You want to just pull up the
All right.
the final TextAid Tuesday webinar that's coming up.
On December the 11th, we will be doing our last TextAid Tuesday. We will be talking about how students take notes with images, how you can increase your vocabulary, and when typing is a difficulty, what we can do there. If you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. My email address is ginger.dewey@readspeaker.com. If you would like a sandbox to try out TextAid, please contact Paul Stisser, whose email address is paul.stisser, S-T-I-S-S-E-R, @readspeaker.com. Thank you all for being with us today. I look forward to seeing y'all in a couple of weeks, and have a great day. See ya.